Attack, HP, Ki, Armor. These are the stats that new players look forward to upgrading when they see the skills menu for the first time. But are the stats that you're upgrading the right ones?
俺の財宝か。欲しけりゃくれてやる。探せ。この世のすべてをそこに置いてきた。
This video will cover stats and the best way to use your potential to maximize progress. Overall, the key thing this video focuses on is survivability and power growth, as these are essential to getting stronger. Now, this is not a race-specific guide. There will be more to come if this video does well, so consider supporting as much as you can. This video is aimed toward new players who have a lot of potential saved up, but don't know what or how to spend it all. The first point that I want to touch on is armor. Armor is one of the more costlier stats to upgrade, and each point allocated to its base gives you an increase of 4 to your overall stats. And each stat in your inventory negates 1 damage done to you. This may seem really cool at first, to get 4 for the price of 1, but let me show you something. Can you tell me the difference between these two videos? Are you able to tell? On the video on the right, the player has an armor that gives almost a 900 boost, and still does such a negligible amount of reducing damage done to you, that it's just not even worth it to upgrade in the first place, and it is better to use that SP to upgrade skills or HP if you want to maximize survivability. To put it simply, would you rather have the health guaranteed to tank multiple hits, or a fickle defense where you can't even tell if it's doing anything? The second stat that I want to go in depth on is Ki. Ki is important, but not necessary the higher the level that you go, and depending on your race and playstyle is dependent on how much you should upgrade. There is more to unpack than meets the eye for Ki, so let's dive into this rabbit hole. This is a stat that you, the player, have to play by ear when deciding whether or not to upgrade. I always recommend upgrading as needed, since you always have the ability to increase your key base, but you are never able to decrease your key base. To determine whether or not you should upgrade this stat should be determined by how often you use a certain skill. Look at the skills that you use on a daily basis and see if they take a certain amount of ki or a certain percentage of ki. These two are incredibly important to distinguish, as some races can get away with as little ki used as possible. Your overall goal is to minimize waiting for your ki to be replenished, and to not have more ki than you need. If nothing else, just upgrade ki as needed until you reach about 40,000, and then play it by ear from there. The last two stats that are the most imperative to upgrade are HP and attack. These two stats always seem to butt heads when the question of, what should I upgrade first, is asked, and the answer is always a fat, it depends. Depending on the goal that you're trying to accomplish should determine which one you prioritize in upgrading. If you are dying too early to monsters that are close to your power, that is a surefire sign to upgrade health until you can tank their attacks. If you are not dying to monsters relative to your power, then you might need to fight a stronger monster or upgrade your attack. I think majority of players know that your attack is linked to the SP that you gain. It's obviously not a 1-to-1 ratio, but there is at least a direct correlation between the damage that you output and the SP that you receive per hit. This means that if prioritizing training is your focal point, then upgrading attack is the right move for you. If you're prioritizing survivability, then play it by ear. Upgrade your HP and attack as needed until bosses or monsters are no longer a threat. Remember, upgrading stats is a marathon, not a race. It's important to note that your survivability can be greatly manipulated with buffs. Because of this, you can get away with a lower HP build if your focus is on defeating bosses. Not to go too in depth with this concept, since this is not a buff guide, there are two buffs that manipulate survivability: extended HP and cell armor. They both last about 10 minutes long and are perfect for a boss fight, allowing you to focus solely on the task at hand and not having to worry about making sure your health is intact. Just as there are ways to manipulate your survivability, there are ways to manipulate your damage output. It is more limited in this regard. The reason why I advocate to upgrade your attack over HP is simple. Notice this saying here. If we buff him, he will be a complete tank to monsters and bosses. The attack suggests otherwise. An attack base of only 2000 still is not nearly enough to fight bosses, especially at the Frieza level. The opposite is also true, also known as a glass cannon, where you deal a lot of damage, but once you get attacked, you're pretty much dead. Long story short, my recommendation is to upgrade these stats as needed, focusing slightly more on attack than you would on HP. I know it's more time consuming than just upgrading all at once, and if you already have a specific goal in mind, then by all means go for that. The point I'm trying to stress is that you can't go back in time to upgrade your stats, so you're better off increasing steadily until you know what your overall goal is. The very last thing I'll be brief on is critical. I didn't think it should have its own category in this video, but my homies in the Discord told me it's necessary, so let's discuss. Critical is something that should maybe get upgraded once, and it shouldn't be touched again until you reach at least 50 billion. My reasoning is that critical takes up such a vast amount of potential that it's not sustainable for a player to handle, much less a beginner. Critical is very useful in late game where each point allocated matters, and where upgrading critical has a direct impact on the chances of you hitting one. Think about it. Upgrading this stat when you're at low level makes no sense. A 1% chance of doubling your damage means absolutely nothing if it means you're sacrificing your attack power to do so, and you're better off just upgrading attack if you want an increase of damage. Overall, don't rush upgrading stats. Try and ensure that each upgrade is done with a purpose. In the worst case scenario, both your attack and HP will max out eventually. There will always be enough potential to hit the cap, so don't feel as if you messed up on upgrading your player. Chances are you still have a huge amount of potential to work with at any given level, and even in the most dire scenario where you spent all of your SP on upgrading skills instead of stats, there are workarounds such as leeching. But that's for a future video, so stick around.